this week on Wednesday, March 30th. It's going to be Orlando Pride versus Gotham FC, Chicago Red Stars versus Racing Louisville, Washington Spirit versus North Carolina Courage. All these games kicking off at 7:30 Eastern Time. Houston Dash versus Kansas City Current at 8:30 Eastern Time. And we have, again, once more, NWSL action after dark. Portland Thorns versus Angel City at 10 p.m. Eastern. So a lot of games for folks to take a look at over Wednesday. 5 games total. We're going to be missing out on a couple teams, but there's a huge slate here that we're going to have to get through, and we're going to let everybody know about how we feel about some of these matches, maybe a couple key ones to watch on Wednesday in case you can't watch all of them. And we're also going to go ahead and give you our picks because we like to do that here on Attacking Third. But before we take a deep dive into these matches, my gosh, Lisa, we're going to have to go through a little bit of an injury report here before we start getting into these matches. And I'm just like, geez, it just feels like one after the other.
And it's not just like a light injury report, which happens. Players get nicks and nabs, and we see them on the injury report, questionable or out. But we have a couple SEI, season-ending injuries that we have to touch on. It's devastating. These poor players. I feel so bad for them, Sandra.
Yeah, I think we should just hop into it, just sort of how we've been getting the news as it's been rolling out. Over the last couple of weeks, there has been some announcements, I guess, so to say, especially coming out of week 2 action for not just any players, but really key players on respective club teams. I guess we're going to start with this first one. During the Orlando Pride and North Carolina Courage match, if you took a listen to our recap episode, we did touch on this briefly, in that Marta was a player that had to make an exit from that match very early on. She went down right around the half-hour mark or so, just prior to that. And the scenes from that, you just sort of look like, well, that doesn't look like it's a simple injury. It looked like something that was more complex based on the player's reaction. The veteran that she is, she went out and still tried to give it a go. But unfortunately, when she tried to make an additional cut, went down immediately once more, waved over trainers, asked to be subbed out of the game. And now post match, now into a new week here, we have an update from Marta herself. She actually took to Instagram to go ahead and put a post up letting fans know. She writes, I'm writing this post to inform you that in our game on Saturday, I suffered a knee ligament injury and I will need surgery. Unfortunately, I will be out of the field for a while. This will be another chapter of my story, and I'm sure I'll come out of it stronger. Now it's time to focus my recovery to get back to doing what I love most, representing my country, my people, and my teams. Thank you all for the constant support. And then she put a bunch of heart emojis, right, representing Brazil or Orlando Pride. But we saw that come out, Lisa. And of course, we were like, oh, like you just hoped it wasn't the worst. And then it comes out to be what that is. So it's tough to sort of see that from a legend of the game having to go out like that with an injury.
Super devastating. And when this injury happened for Marta, she jumped up and landed. And as soon as she landed, she took to the ground. She did continue playing for a little bit, which that happens so many times with injuries because it's an initial pop and then you can continue playing, but ultimately coming out. And this is probably one of the most this is one of the more vague announcements than the other two that we have to report on, because it just says a knee ligament injury and that she will be out of the field for a while. So that's unsure if that's season-ending injury or if that's just a few months of the Challenge Cup. There's a number of different things. I mean, Becky Sauerbrunn, she had a knee scope done, which is a minor knee surgery, and you can walk and run almost days after that surgery happened. So Becky Sauerbrunn hoping to be back by the regular season, but unsure about Marta for Orlando Pride. But this is a really big loss for the Pride. And
Absolutely.
We'll touch on it.
Yeah, it's coming directly from the player, right? So like you mentioned and touched on, it just kind of, it's vague in the sense where she's just referring to it as a right ligament, or excuse me, as a knee ligament injury. If I'm sure if people want to try to find highlights, they'll try to identify what knee it is or what that means, but nothing from the club specifically yet. But I'm assuming that once she does have surgery, I'm sure there will be some type of update on the success of it, or more details on that. But we had other clubs announcing similar injuries. Unfortunately, Tierna Davidson from the Chicago Red Stars, the club announcing that she also has sustained a season-ending injury, a torn ACL. Unfortunately, this one coming via way of training, so not necessarily something that was impacted during that match week 1 game where they had a win against the Houston Dash, but something coming out post match, sustained during training, and unfortunately, she will no longer be part of the Chicago Red Stars 2022 season. And when we're talking about players like Tierna Davidson, we obviously, yes, look at the huge impact that's going to have for a club like the Chicago Red Stars. But we're looking at a young talent in Davidson and what that means for potentially the United States women's national team rosters that are going to be announced pretty soon.
Yeah, it's all true because of that. And Davidson not on those rosters because of an injury. This is another huge, devastating loss for Chicago. This is a player that Chris Petroselli, head coach of the Red Stars, built his entire defense around in Tierna Davidson. And now to not have that, she didn't play in match day 2 for the Challenge Cup. She was out for that one. And Petroselli saying that it didn't look too good, that she would not be playing. And then this announcement coming out about her ACL, just speedy recoveries for Marta and for Davidson.
Yeah, and then we have one more to get through here. Again, another unfortunate season-ending injury. This one coming via Kansas City Current about Lynn Williams, stating that Lynn Williams also will have surgery after suffering an acute injury to her right leg during the opening match against Racing Louisville FC. So this one coming out from directly from actual match play. So maybe the player feeling some uncomfortability, right? Bringing that up to trainers and physicians. And our assumption here is that, based on that, further testing is done, right? And then you get to see that unfortunately it's another ligament issue. So another huge loss. I mean, this is a player that this franchise just acquired over the offseason.
Yeah, this is a really big loss. Lynn suffered this injury in the opening match of the Challenge Cup on March 18th when Kansas City faced Racing Louisville. It was actually towards the end of that match. She came down and came off the field, and Kansas City had used all of their substitutes and their sub windows, so they couldn't replace her. And Kansas City played down the final handful of minutes or so of that match. And Williams on the injury report list for match day 2. And now this news comes out. Just really devastating to see. This is not that common to have 3 really influential players getting essentially the same injury, 2 ACLs and one a knee ligament injury specified over the course of a 2-week span. Is that too much impact in the off season? Is that training their bodies too hard? Was preseason too long? There's a number of different factors going into this, and I hope sports science is on top of this. These players all wear tracker jackers, what we called them in college, little devices that track their movement, which leg they push more, which foot they start their sprint with, which foot they land on more, every single impact of that. And I hope that the studying is immediately starting to figure out why this happened, if they were contact or non-contact. This is devastating. 3 huge players in the league.
Yeah, massive. And obviously we're likely going to touch on these players a little bit more as we start getting into these previews and some of our picks, right, for the upcoming midweek action.